Hi! Welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When night falls in Cedar Green, one man dares to break the rules. What began as a quiet move into a peaceful suburb spirals into a battle of surveillance, power, and defiance. A nurse, a curfew, and a neighborhood with something to hide. Welcome to the war behind the white fences. I bought the townhouse in Cedar Green because it was cheap, quiet, and close enough to the hospital that I wouldn't hate my life after a 12-hour night shift. That was the entire checklist. No dream, no white picket fence fantasy, no community spirit. I was 35, worked as a nurse on nights, and valued two things: sleep and predictability. Cedar Green looked like it could offer both. The place itself was fine. Beige siding, identical row of townhouses, small driveway, postage stamp lawn that I never planned to love. The HOA paperwork was thick but boring, exactly what you expect. Trash cans out of sight, no flamingo lawn ornaments, no neon lights. I skimmed it, signed where the tabs told me to sign, and moved in. For the first few months, nothing happened. I left for work around 7:30 in the evening, came back around 8 in the morning, nodded at neighbors who were walking dogs or loading kids into SUVs, and went inside to sleep while the world did its daytime thing. The first sign that something was off came in an envelope taped directly to my front door, bright orange, impossible to miss. It said "Notice of Violation" in bold letters, followed by my name, my address, and a fine of $200. The violation was listed as curfew breach. I honestly thought it was a prank. Cedar Green didn't have teenagers roaming the streets, and even if it did, I wasn't one of them. I took the paper inside, sat at my kitchen counter, and read it twice. According to the notice, residents were prohibited from moving about the community after 8 in the evening without an approved reason. I laughed out loud, the kind of short, confused laugh you make when your brain refuses to accept new information. I checked the date and time of the violation, 7:35 in the evening, the exact time I backed out of my driveway to go to work. I went through my HOA binder, flipping pages while my coffee went cold. There was nothing about a curfew, nothing even close. No amendment, no addendum, no fine schedule related to movement. Still thinking this had to be an error, I went to the HOA office the next afternoon before going to sleep. The place looked more like a converted living room than an office, with framed certificates on the wall and a faint smell of lemon cleaner. That was where I met Norma Haskins. She was sitting behind a desk that looked too large for the room, perfectly upright, hands folded, eyes sharp in a way that made you feel like you'd already disappointed her. I explained the situation calmly, showed her the notice, told her I worked nights at the hospital. She didn't even look surprised. She adjusted her glasses and said, "The rule was passed 3 months ago. Curfew begins at 8. I told her I had never received anything about it. She smiled, thin and patient. It was approved by the board. Notices were sent. I asked how I was supposed to get to work. She tilted her head, like she was humoring a child. You could request an exception, or you could consider changing shifts. Many residents value peace and quiet in the evenings." I felt something tighten in my chest. I told her very clearly that she couldn't tell a grown man when he was allowed to leave his own house. Norma didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "This is a private community, Mr. Connolly. You agreed to abide by HOA rules when you purchased the property." That was when I asked to see the rule in the documents I had signed. She paused, just for a fraction of a second, then said the rule had been added later. Perfectly legal, in her words, for the good of the community. I left the office with the fine still unpaid and a headache forming behind my eyes. That evening, I went to work as usual. At 7:35, I backed out of my driveway again, half expecting someone to jump out with a stopwatch. When I got home the next morning, there was another notice waiting. That was when I realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a declaration. I kept going to work. What else was I supposed to do? Stop paying bills? Let patients bleed out in the ER because Norma Haskins thought the night air was too rowdy? Every evening, same routine. Uniform on, bag slung over my shoulder, out the door by 7:35. And like clockwork, every morning I'd return home to another envelope. 14 days, 14 violations, $200 each. That's $2,800 in fines for doing my job. They were lined up in perfect chronological order on my kitchen counter, like a passive-aggressive calendar of bureaucratic spite. After the fifth one, I stopped opening them. I already knew what they said. I figured if they wanted to play stupid games, they could win stupid prizes. So I wrote a formal letter to the HOA, printed, signed, and sent by certified mail. In it, I laid it out. The rule was unconstitutional. It restricted my freedom of movement, and it wasn't part of the HOA documents I had agreed to when I bought the place. I demanded they rescind the fines and remove the rule. I CC'd it to the HOA board and their listed legal contact. I even used Times New Roman just to let them know I meant business. A week later, I got a response. It was on official cedar green HOA letterhead, thick paper, self-important font. It was signed by Norma. Mr. Connolly, your refusal to comply with the Cedar Green community guidelines has been noted. Continued violation of our curfew policy and non-payment of fines will result in the placement of a lien on your property, as outlined in Article 9, Section 4B of the HOA Covenant. You have 30 days to remit payment in full. No signature from a lawyer, just Norma, like she thought she was a one-woman court. I didn't panic. I dealt with worse. I made an appointment with a real attorney, Greg Sutherland, recommended by a coworker who'd been through her own HOA nightmare. His office was crammed with legal books and smelled like stale coffee and tired victories. He wore a frumpy suit and spoke like he hated wasting syllables. After I explained everything, Greg leaned back in his chair and rubbed his jaw. "Well, this is a new one," he muttered. "Curfew enforcement? On private property." He glanced at the letter. "And they're threatening a lien over this." "Yup." He sighed. "Okay. First of all, that rule's unenforceable. They can't tell you when you can leave your own house. That's a basic constitutional right. Second, they can't retroactively enforce a new rule without proper due process and owner vote. Did they have a community vote on this? If they did, I never heard about it." Greg nodded. "There it is. We can challenge this, but it's going to take time. 3 to 4 months minimum, and in the meantime, they're not going to stop harassing you. They'll try to pressure you into submission." I asked if they could really slap a lien on my property. Greg shrugged. "They can try. Doesn't mean it'll hold up in court, but title companies don't like risk, so it could mess with your credit or refinancing options. It's leverage. That's all this is." So I did what any stubborn, sleep-deprived nurse would do. I kept going to work. I stacked their notices in a drawer, bought a cheap file cabinet to hold everything, and installed a new camera above my front door. One day, I noticed a new flyer posted near the entrance gate of the neighborhood. It was from the HOA, titled Compliance Reminders. My name wasn't mentioned, but the phrase habitual violators was bolded. There was a cartoon of a man sneaking around after dark, complete with raccoon mask. Then a neighbor, gray hair, khakis, driving a Lexus, walked past me while I was unloading groceries and muttered, "Some people just can't follow the rules." I gave him the kind of smile I reserve for patients who insist I'm trying to poison them with 4 fluids. They were trying to wear me down. That much was clear, but I wasn't cracking. If anything, it just pissed me off more. The night I found them sitting outside my house was the same night I realized this wasn't just about money anymore. I was heading to work as usual, dressed in scrubs, keys in hand. It was a little after 7:30, early enough that the sky still held some color. And there they were. 2 guys in a black SUV, engine running, headlights off, parked across the street with the kind of subtlety you'd expect from a bad surveillance movie. At first, I assumed they were waiting for someone. Then I stepped out and the passenger side window rolled down. "Curfew's in 10 minutes, one of them called out. His voice was smug, deep, slow, like he'd practiced it in the mirror. I didn't respond, just walked to my car. As I backed out of the driveway, I saw the SUV shift into gear and slowly follow me all the way to the front gate. They didn't do anything illegal, no honking, no blocking, but the headlights stayed trained on my rearview mirror until I turned onto the main road. It happened again the next night. Different car, same 2 guys, big corn-fed types, built like former high school linebackers who never moved on. I recognized one of them from a block party I didn't go to. Curtis, if memory served. The other guy was his twin in attitude, if not DNA. Later, I'd learn his name was Wayne. They weren't just watching. They were performing. On the 3rd night, as I left my driveway, one of them pointed a flashlight straight at my face. The other shouted, "Violation! Curfew breach!" It would have been funny if it didn't feel like the opening act to something darker. I kept my composure, drove off. But that night at the hospital, between vitals and medication passes, I couldn't shake the unease. This wasn't just HOA crap anymore. This was personal, targeted. I filed a report online with the local police department. Nothing dramatic, just a formal complaint. I included the times, descriptions, license plates. Didn't expect much, but I wanted something on record. The next night, I stayed inside and waited, just to see. 7:20. SUV pulls up. Same guys. Curtis in the driver's seat. Wayne in the passenger seat, eating sunflower seeds like it was a damn stakeout. I opened my blinds and waved. Wayne raised his flashlight in mock salute. The following afternoon, a cruiser pulled up outside while I was drinking cold coffee in my boxers. 2 officers stepped out. They were polite, professional, maybe even a little embarrassed. I showed them footage from my door camera. Nothing illegal, just weird. The officers nodded, made notes, said they'd speak to the individuals involved. I could practically hear the invisible shrug. One of them said, "They claim they're just conducting neighborhood security as part of the HOA's safety initiative." Right. 2 unemployed cousins with nothing better to do than play Paul Blart in a used Dodge. I asked if there was anything I could do legally to stop it. The officer shrugged. As long as they're on public streets and not trespassing, there's not much we can do. So I did what I do best. Adapted. I installed another camera. Wide angle, motion activated, night vision. A nice one too, not the bargain bin crap. Every time those 2 morons showed up, they were recorded from 3 angles. I labeled each file with the date and time, uploaded everything to cloud storage. They started switching vehicles like they were in some low-rent spy movie. A white pickup, a gray sedan. Once even a moped, which would have been hilarious if it didn't come with a high-beam flashlight and the sound of Wayne yelling, "Neighborhood watch!" I didn't take the bait. I didn't yell. I didn't escalate. But I didn't forget either. A week into their little game, someone rang my doorbell at midnight. I wasn't on shift. I was dead asleep, exhausted, and I thought maybe someone needed help. Medical, urgent. I opened the door, half awake. No one was there. Just a rock on the porch and the sound of a car engine pulling away. I checked the footage. Curtis, hood up, grinning, tossing the rock before jogging back to the SUV. The next day, I printed stills and dropped them off at the police station. I added a handwritten note. How many nights of this count as harassment? No response. But the file was growing. So was my patience. For now. Friday night. I was already running 10 minutes late for my shift, thanks to a nurse calling out and our charge texting me, borderline begging, to cover. I was halfway into my uniform when I noticed the notification pop up from my door cam. Motion detected. Front yard. Timestamp 7:38. I glanced at the monitor, expecting the usual show, but the SUV wasn't across the street this time. It was in my driveway. Curtis and Wayne weren't watching from afar anymore. They were standing in front of my car, arms crossed, blocking it. At first, I thought it was a scare tactic, posturing. Maybe they'd move once I opened the door. I walked out slowly, my duffel bag slung across one shoulder, ID badge already clipped to my scrub top. Curtis straightened up. "Evening, nurse boy." Wayne smirked. "Going somewhere?" I kept walking. "You 2 need to move." Curtis stepped closer, just 1 pace, but enough to make a point. "It's curfew. HOA rules say you can't leave after 2000 hours. That's 8 p.m. for civilians." Wayne added, "We've logged the violation. You're gonna rack up another fine." I stopped a few feet away from them. "You 2 really gonna stand here and pretend you're enforcing law with clipboards and a flashlight?" "No clipboard tonight," Curtis said. "Tonight, we're making sure you get the message." He took another step, and I caught a flash of something in his jacket, metal glinting under the porch light. Not a gun. Worse in some ways. A damn brass knuckle. Illegal in this state, but he probably thought it made him look tough. I dropped my bag by the car. My voice stayed flat. "I don't care if the HOA told you to stand out here with a marching band. This is my driveway. Move." Wayne stepped into my space, too close. I could smell beef jerky on his breath. "Make us." My fists weren't clenched yet. Not quite. I raised both hands slightly, palms out. "You don't want this." Curtis chuckled. "You gonna box me, tough guy? What are you, some YouTube fighter?" I didn't answer. He reached out and grabbed my shoulder. That was the moment. I didn't think. I moved. I shrugged the hand off and stepped back just in time to avoid Wayne lunging forward with a push. His weight carried him too far, and he stumbled into my car door. Curtis swung. A wide, angry punch. Sloppy. I ducked under it and drove a quick hook into his ribs, left side just under the arm. He staggered, winded. Wayne recovered fast, too fast. He came in again, this time with both hands up like he thought he knew how to fight. I shifted to the side, grabbed his hoodie, and shoved him hard into the rear quarter panel of my car. His forehead made a solid thunk against the glass. He crumpled, not out cold, but stunned. Curtis pulled something shiny from his jacket, the brass knuckle. My heart jumped, but instinct beat panic. I stepped in and hit his shoulder clean, the same side I'd already tagged. His arm went limp. The weapon dropped to the pavement with a clatter. We locked eyes. He saw it in my face. The line. The end of the game. Curtis backed off, breathing hard, wincing. Wayne was still groaning on the ground. I bent down, picked up the brass knuckle with 2 fingers, and walked backward toward my door, never turning my back. I reached inside, hit the emergency dial button on the wall panel. "Dispatch," the voice said. "This is 911. What's your emergency?" "I've been attacked," I said calmly. 2 men outside my house. I defended myself. They're still here. "Are you injured?" "No," I replied, "but one of them had a weapon. Illegal. I've got it. And everything's on video." While I was still on the line, I opened the app and saved the door cam recording to the cloud. I wanted everything backed up before the cops showed up. No room for error, no gaps. I could already imagine Norma spinning this as a misunderstanding. Curtis tried to walk away. I raised my phone, still recording. "Don't run. Cops are on the way. You leave now, it's obstruction, and I will press charges." He hesitated. Wayne muttered something from the ground. Then the unmistakable wail of a siren split the air. Not far off. Less than a minute. Curtis froze. 2 patrol cars pulled up a moment later, tires crunching on the gravel, lights flashing, doors opening fast. The officers took one look at me, still in scrubs, breathing steady, holding the brass knuckle in an evidence bag, and then at Curtis and Wayne, who looked exactly like 2 dumb thugs caught doing something very stupid. I handed over the weapon. "Check the camera. It caught everything. Assault, illegal weapon, trespassing." The officer nearest to me, young, buzz cut, no bullshit, gave me a tight nod. "We'll need a statement." "But yes, sir. We saw the footage." The dispatch already reviewed it. "Looks clear-cut." He turned to the other officer. "Cuff them." Curtis tried to protest. "He hit me." The cop just pointed at the camera. "You threw first." Wayne groaned again. "Man, this is such crap." "Tell it to the judge," the officer said. They were both cuffed and put in the back of separate cruisers. As they were loaded in, I caught a glimpse of Curtis's face. The smugness was gone. He looked genuinely stunned, like he didn't understand how this all fell apart. I explained what happened to a sergeant who showed up 15 minutes later. He watched the footage again, took my statement, and asked if I needed medical attention. I didn't. The whole time my hospital kept calling. I finally answered, told them I wouldn't make it tonight, explained why. My manager, God bless her, just said, "Don't worry about it. Take care of yourself." After everyone left and the cruisers disappeared into the night, I walked back inside and shut the door behind me. My hands were still trembling, not from fear, from restraint. I made tea, sat on the couch, watched the footage again, and saved it in 3 places, just in case. The next morning, I woke up to a half-dozen texts and 2 voicemails from a blocked number. I didn't check them. I already knew what they were about. Some combination of passive threats, false concern, and that thin veneer of authority. Norma Haskins wrapped herself in like a shawl. The HOA had officially stepped in it, and they knew it. The bruises on my forearms were already fading, but the adrenaline hadn't. I spent most of that morning sitting on my porch with a fresh mug of coffee and a very distinct lack of fear. It was the first time since this circus started that I felt like I was on even footing again. At exactly 10:37 a.m., a black sedan with tinted windows pulled into my driveway, unmarked government plates. 2 detectives stepped out. One in plain clothes looked ex-military, square jaw, no nonsense. The other, a woman in a navy pantsuit, mid-40s, wore her badge around her neck. Both of them looked at me the same way I look at a trauma patient with missing paperwork, like I was a story waiting to be sorted out. "Mr. Connolly?" the woman said. "Yup." "I'm Detective Ramos. This is Detective Laird. Mind if we come in?" I let them inside. We sat in my living room, the door cam footage already queued up on the TV. I didn't wait for them to ask. This is everything from last night, from the moment they parked to the moment they got cuffed. There's a second angle from the camera above the garage. It caught the moment he reached for the weapon. They watched in silence. No reactions. No interruptions. Just careful, professional attention. When it was over, Ramos turned to me. You handled yourself pretty well. I'm a nurse. We're trained to stay calm while everything around us catches fire. Laird cracked a smile at that, just for a second. They asked a few more questions about previous encounters, dates, times, the buildup. I showed them the folder on my laptop labeled time-stamped footage of Curtis and Wayne over the last 2 weeks, them tailing me, flashlights in my face. That midnight rock throw. That's stalking, Ramos said, and that's before we even get to the assault. I filed police reports, I said. Nothing happened. Not surprising, Laird muttered. Without a direct threat or physical contact, most patrol units won't act. This changes that. Can I press charges? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. You already did when you made the statement last night, Ramos said. But this is going bigger now. Bigger how? They exchanged a look. Then Laird said, Curtis and Wayne talked, separately. Curtis is trying to act tough. Wayne, not so much. He's already cooperating. I raised my eyebrows. That was fast. Jail does that, Ramos said, especially when it's real and not just theoretical. They explained. Wayne had admitted that he and Curtis were being paid by Norma Haskins, $500 a month each, to patrol the neighborhood and enforce compliance. The phrasing was, hers, not theirs. According to Wayne, Norma had explicitly told them to deal with the nurse before he infects others with rebellion. I stared at them. She actually said that. Verbatim, Ramos said, flipping through her notes. She also allegedly told them, make him wish he'd never moved in. So now we were past HOA overreach, past intimidation. We were firmly in criminal conspiracy territory. You planning to arrest her? Soon, Laird said, but we want it clean. Paper trail, financials, motive, directives. We're already filing for a warrant to search her home and the HOA office. We'll need you available in case we need corroboration. I nodded. Whatever you need. By noon, the neighborhood was buzzing. The rumor mill churned like a hurricane. Someone had seen Curtis get hauled out in cuffs. Someone else said Wayne cried in the back of the squad car. I kept quiet. Let the show run itself. Around 2 in the afternoon, my lawyer Greg called. I brought him up to speed. They attacked you? He asked, incredulous. With a weapon? Yup. And it's on video? 2 angles. Clean audio. He chuckled, dry and vicious. Oh, Norma's in deep now. He started talking lawsuits, civil damages, defamation, emotional distress, punitive damages, the whole damn buffet. But I told him to hold off. Let the cops finish first. I want the criminal stuff airtight. You're smarter than most, he said. Most people would be frothing for a payday. Not frothing, I replied. Just very, very focused. That evening, I got a knock on the door. Not cops this time. It was one of the board members, Allison Kim, early 50s, always wore jogging gear and avoided eye contact. She looked rattled, like she hadn't slept. I didn't know, she said, before I could say anything. Didn't know what? What she was doing. With the patrols. With you. I thought it was just warnings. Letters. I didn't know about the rest. Then you weren't paying attention, I said, maybe a little too coldly. You're on the board. This happened under your nose. I'm sorry, she said. If you need anything, if you need me to testify, I'll let the detectives know. She left quickly. I didn't watch her go. By nightfall, I received a formal letter from the HOA. This one was different. No fines, no threats, just a single paragraph. In light of recent events, the Cedar Green Homeowners Association is suspending enforcement of the curfew rule pending further legal review. We regret any distress caused to our residents and will fully cooperate with law enforcement. It wasn't an apology. Not really. But it was the first crack in the wall. Curtis and Wayne were still in custody. I heard from Ramos that Wayne had officially flipped, signed a written statement detailing his payments, his instructions, even screenshots of text messages from Norma. Things like, he thinks he can ignore me. Make sure he doesn't, and don't let him leave tonight. That was enough for Ramos and Laird to move on Norma. A warrant was issued. The next morning, cops showed up at her place. 2 squad cars, 1 unmarked sedan. Neighbors gathered like crows. I didn't join them. I just stood at my kitchen window and watched as Norma Haskins, queen of the HOA, enforcer of bedtime, tyrant of shrubs and siding colors, was led out of her home in handcuffs. She didn't say a word, just looked straight ahead, lips tight, face pale. The crowd didn't cheer. Cedar Green wasn't that kind of place, but no one looked upset either. Later that night, my doorbell rang again. This time, it was a pizza delivery I hadn't ordered. Inside the box was a note scrawled in shaky handwriting. "Thanks for standing up. We're with you. Unit 14. It wasn't much, but it was enough. The search warrant on Norma's house was more productive than anyone expected. According to Ramos, it took them less than an hour to find what they needed, and a lot they didn't even know to look for. The first thing they uncovered was a binder, thick, leather-bound, labeled in gold marker, Community Risk Log. Inside, it read more like a high school burn book than any kind of legitimate HOA documentation. Pages and pages of handwritten notes on residents, late dues, talks back, dog too loud, possibly Democrat. I wish I were kidding. My name had its own tab. Connolly, night shift, non-compliant, arrogant. Dangerous precedent if left unpunished. Below that, consider formal HOA sanctions, monitor daily, apply pressure through family if applicable. I don't even have family in the state. Then came the payment records. Neatly printed Venmo screenshots and handwritten receipts. Norma had been paying Curtis and Wayne $6,000 over the past year. In the margin of one note, she'd scribbled, "Extra $200 for October. Curfew enforcements successful." There were also copies of emails between Norma and the other board members. Some were benign, schedule reminders, budget approvals. Others were different. One sent from Norma's personal email to Alice and Kim, and another board member read, "I'm done playing nice. If we don't crack down now, we lose control of this place. People like him think they can ignore the rules. We make the rules." Another, "He won't leave on his own. We'll make him miserable enough to want to." By the end of the week, 3 more residents had come forward with complaints. One man said his car tires were slashed after he questioned an HOA landscaping bill. Another woman, a single mom, said her mailbox was ripped off its post the day after she refused to let Norma inspect her backyard for compliance. No reports had been filed, just fear, quiet anger, resignation. But Norma had overplayed her hand with me, and now the dam had cracked. The DA's office got involved. Ramos called me personally to explain the charges: conspiracy to commit assault, stalking, unlawful restriction of movement, embezzlement of HOA funds, abuse of authority, and that was before the financial audit finished. HOA funds were meant for landscaping, road maintenance, community events. Norma had been siphoning off thousands for what she labeled neighborhood security infrastructure, which, translated from dictator speak, meant her goon nephews. Over $23,000 misallocated over 14 months. No receipts filed, no approval minutes, no transparency. It was fraud, plain and simple. She lawyered up fast, some smug real estate defense attorney from across the county. He tried to spin the whole thing as a misunderstanding, claimed she was acting in the community's best interest, that the patrols were volunteer efforts, and that any altercations were unfortunate but isolated incidents. But the evidence didn't care about PR. Greg, my attorney, was already preparing our civil suit. He sent me copies of the initial filings, claims for emotional distress, reputational harm, and financial damages due to the illegal fines and attempted lien. He smiled during the Zoom call like a man who smelled blood in the water. "They're gonna settle," he said. "She's toxic now. The HOA's gonna want to cut her loose and make this disappear." He was right. At the next emergency board meeting, Norma was officially removed as president. The announcement came via email. No ceremony, no thanks. Just 2 sentences. Effective immediately, Norma Haskins is no longer affiliated with the Cedar Green HOA in any capacity. Interim leadership will be announced pending internal election. The board tried to act like they were victims too. Some probably were. Others? Complicit, cowardly, or willfully blind. But now they were desperate to clean house before things got worse. A week later, I was called into court to give preliminary testimony. Not the main trial, just a procedural hearing for the charges against Curtis and Wayne. They were there, looking like discount extras from a courtroom drama. Wayne wouldn't meet my eye. Curtis did, but not with the usual defiance. Just tired anger. Maybe at me, maybe at Norma, maybe at himself. I told the judge exactly what happened, clearly, calmly. The DA added the video as evidence, along with the recovered weapon and payment trail. Their public defender tried to argue the two were misled by an authority figure and lacked criminal intent. Didn't matter. Curtis was denied bail. Wayne got a plea deal on the table, cooperate fully, testify against Norma, and he'd serve probation instead of jail time. He took it. After the hearing, Ramos approached me in the hallway. "You did good," she said. I shrugged. "I just didn't want to get jumped for going to work." She nodded. "Sometimes it starts that simple. But what you did, most people would have moved. You fought back." I didn't say anything to that. I didn't feel like a crusader. I felt like a guy who got dragged into a war because someone else couldn't stand the idea of losing control. Later that night, a small neighborhood newsletter appeared in my mailbox, clearly an early attempt by the interim board to regain trust. Inside was a vague apology, some bullet points about rebuilding community trust, and, at the bottom, a single line in bold. "Effective immediately, the curfew policy has been declared void and unenforceable." It was quiet the next few days. No patrols, no threats, no envelopes taped to my door, just the wind in the trees, the distant sound of a dog barking, and, for the first time since I moved in, peace. The trial didn't happen right away. Justice, as I'd already learned, moves slower than you'd think, even when someone's caught red-handed. For weeks, things stayed in that strange limbo. Curtis sat in county lockup, Wayne stayed out on a short leash while testifying, and Norma. She clammed up completely. No media appearances, no statements, not even a whisper from her defense team. She might as well have been swallowed by the earth. Meanwhile, Cedar Green tried to go back to normal. The new interim board sent out cheerful newsletters with phrases like community healing and shared values. They planted a tree in the park, started a volunteer group for food drives. Alice and Kim even came to my door again, this time with cookies and what I think was genuine remorse. Still, the neighborhood felt tense, like everyone was waiting for a second shoe to drop. It came in the form of a subpoena. I was called to testify in Norma's preliminary hearing, not just about the assault, but about everything: the fines, the intimidation, the curfew policy, and how it escalated. I showed up in slacks and a button down, trying not to look like I'd rather be inserting IVs or running trauma codes. Norma was there. First time I'd seen her in weeks. She looked older, smaller. Her hair wasn't done the way it used to be, and she wore a drab gray cardigan instead of one of those aggressive flower print blazers she used to love. But her eyes, those were the same. Sharp, cold. Still convinced she was the smartest person in the room, she didn't look at me as I walked past her to the stand. The assistant DA asked the questions. I answered them cleanly, didn't exaggerate, didn't editorialize, just told the truth. The judge listened carefully. Norma's lawyer kept objecting, trying to frame everything as neighborhood governance and misunderstood policy enforcement. But then came the killer moment, the moment Ramos had warned me about. They introduced the HOA meeting notes, not the official ones, the real ones, found on Norma's home laptop. They were handwritten drafts, emails never sent, letters never filed, but they were damning. Phrases like, pressure him until he sells, make an example out of him, and no one challenges HOA authority and stays. The DA asked if I'd ever been shown any of these before. I said no. The judge leaned forward. So, these were private communications, not approved or disclosed to the HOA board or community. Correct, I said. It wasn't the final trial, but it didn't need to be. The evidence was overwhelming. The court ruled there was sufficient cause for full charges, and the DA moved fast. Within days, Norma was officially charged with conspiracy to commit assault, criminal harassment, unlawful restraint, misuse of HOA funds, fraud, abuse of position in a fiduciary capacity. She was released on bail, barely. Her lawyer had tried to argue she was a pillar of the community and posed no flight risk. The DA countered by citing the binder of surveillance notes she'd kept on half the neighborhood. Guess who won? Curtis pled guilty shortly after that. He got 1 year in jail for the assault, plus an additional 3 months for carrying an illegal weapon. Not a huge sentence, but it stuck. He didn't apologize in court, just looked down at his feet while the judge read the sentence. His mom was there, I think. She cried. He didn't. Wayne, because of his cooperation, got 6 months of probation, 200 hours of community service, and a strict restraining order. I was fine with that. He folded early. gave us everything we needed, let him paint fences and pick up trash for 6 months. He earned the downgrade. But Norma, that took longer. Her trial was scheduled for spring, but her lawyer saw the writing on the wall. After a brief negotiation, Norma agreed to a plea deal. No jail time, but 3 years probation, $15,000 in fines, mandatory repayment of the $23,000 stolen from the HOA, permanent ban from serving on any HOA board in the state, a formal written apology to affected residents. Publicly posted, I read her apology letter. It was about what you'd expect. Lawyer crafted, devoid of emotion, full of passive voice and euphemisms. I regret that actions taken under my leadership were perceived as harmful. You know, that kind of crap. Still, it was a legal requirement, and now her name was officially disgraced. And me? Greg made sure I got mine too. The HOA agreed to settle our civil claim out of court. $18,000, full reimbursement of all fines, compensation for emotional distress, and an official apology from the HOA itself, delivered in writing, read aloud at the next meeting, and posted to the HOA website for 90 days. They even offered to cover legal expenses, which Greg took great pleasure in inflating, just a little. After the check cleared, Greg told me something interesting. This case is going to make the rounds. Law journals, HOA training seminars, maybe even local news. I didn't ask for that, I said. He nodded. You didn't. That's what makes it interesting. The curfew was dead, buried, officially declared unconstitutional and beyond the legal authority of the HOA to enforce. More importantly, the community had changed. People who used to avoid eye contact now waved. One guy down the street brought me a six-pack and a thank you card. Another woman left a handwritten note on my porch saying she'd felt like a prisoner in her own home for 2 years, but had been too scared to speak. Norma sold her house within the month. Rumor had it she moved out of state. Some said she went to Florida, others said Texas. Didn't matter. Her shadow was gone. And Cedar Green? It finally started to feel like home. Some people think peace comes with silence. I've found it comes in the little sounds, the ones you only notice when the chaos finally stops, like the hum of crickets at night, undisturbed by headlights creeping past your driveway. The soft clink of wind chimes someone hung up near the community park, now that no one's afraid to break an imaginary curfew, or the way neighbors say hello in the morning without a trace of suspicion in their eyes. 3 months had passed since Norma Haskins left Cedar Green. Her house sold fast, probably cash, probably to some developer who never heard of her. The shutters were painted a different color now. The front porch was cleared of garden gnomes and surveillance signs. Someone put up a wreath on the door. No one spoke her name anymore, but her absence was everywhere. The new HOA board, led by a retired high school principal named Martin Hernandez, was doing what no one had done in years: listening. Open meetings, published minutes, transparent budgeting. The curfew was gone. The security committee disbanded. The patrol SUV towed away and sold. At one of the first open forums, Martin publicly apologized to me on behalf of the board. Mr. Connolly, he said into the mic, we failed you. And more importantly, we let fear rule this neighborhood for too long. You reminded us that rules don't mean anything if they're not fair, and that silence doesn't mean peace. It got quiet in the room after that. Not awkward, just thoughtful. People started speaking up. One woman mentioned how she used to avoid walking her dog at night because she didn't want to be seen. A young couple admitted they almost sold their home after receiving 3 separate compliance warnings for parking too close to the curb. A veteran on the far side of the neighborhood said he once got fined for flying the American flag past approved daylight hours. Turns out I hadn't been the only one. I'd just been the first one who hit back hard enough to break the surface. As for me, life returned to something like normal. I still worked the night shift, still left home at 7:30 sharp with my scrubs on and my bag over my shoulder. But now, no one followed me. No one waited at the end of the street with a flashlight. No more fake patrols or taped-up warnings. Just the motion-activated porch light flicking on as I locked my door behind me. One night, as I stepped outside, a neighbor across the street raised a hand and waved. "Have a good shift, Jared," he called. "Thanks," I said. "Stay safe." The words weren't loaded anymore, just polite. The new door camera I'd installed, the one with upgraded night vision, blinked to life and caught the moment. Not because it needed to, just because it was there. A habit now, a precaution, a memory. I got into my car, started the engine, and drove out of Cedar Green without anyone watching me go. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't look in the rearview mirror.